The rumors swirling around the league have finally broken the surface, and if the whispers out of front offices are even half true, we are about to witness an unprecedented seismic shift in the NBA's financial landscape. Welcome back, basketball fans, to an absolute blockbuster edition where we are breaking down a story that could redefine how championship rosters are constructed in the modern era. We are tracking a fascinating, highly unexpected development involving two players at completely different stages of their careers, yet bound by the exact same singular obsession: winning at the absolute highest level. Tonight, the headlines are dominated by none other than Los Angeles Lakers guard Austin Reaves and Denver Nuggets superstar, the multi-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. Reports are emerging that both players are facing unique variations of what insiders are calling internal and external pine pressure, a brewing storm of organizational expectation, roster mechanics, and personal legacy that might lead them to take massive, unprecedented pay cuts in their upcoming contract negotiations to secure ultimate championship glory. Let that sink in for a moment. In an era where player empowerment usually translates to maximizing every single dollar on a supermax contract, what a modern collective bargaining agreement penalizes big spenders with draconian luxury tax aprons, two of the most impactful players in the league are reportedly considering leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table. For Austin Reaves, the darling of Laker Nation, this is about navigating the brutal reality of playing alongside an aging LeBron James and Anthony Davis in a market that demands nothing less than a Larry O'Brien trophy every single year. For Nikola Jokic, it is about sustaining a dynasty in Denver, ensuring that the small market Nuggets can keep a competitive core around him before the league's new financial rules completely gut their depth. This isn't just standard off-season speculation. This is a cold, calculated look at how the NBA's new salary cap structure is forcing superstars and elite role players alike to make an agonizing choice. Do you chase the absolute maximum financial compensation available to you, or do you sacrifice generational wealth to ensure your front office has the flexibility to build a legitimate, deep contender around you? The implications of these potential decisions are massive, threatening to upset the balance of power in both the Eastern and Western conferences. If Reaves and Jokic actually execute these contract maneuvers, it will send shockwaves to the National Basketball Players Association and set a wild new precedent for how stars value rings versus revenue. We're going to unpack the breaking details of these reports, analyze the precise salary cap mechanics driving these decisions, explore the history of superstar pay cuts from Tim Duncan to Tom Brady, and project exactly how the Lakers and Nuggets will look if their stars decide to prioritize championships over cash. To truly understand why this is happening right now, we have to look at the unique positions both of these franchises find themselves in. The Los Angeles Lakers are perpetually caught in a win-now window, with LeBron James defying father time but inevitably entering the twilight of his historic career. The front office is under immense pressure to maximize every single season. Austin Reaves has evolved from an undrafted success story into an indispensable offensive engine for this team. His ability to create closeouts, make out of the pick and roll, and hit clutch shots has made him a highly coveted asset across the league. Under his current contract structure, he has vastly outperformed his earnings, making him one of the best value contracts in basketball. But as the Lakers look toward the future, trying to figure out how to add a third impactful piece or retain crucial depth without triggering the catastrophic second tax apron, the financial squeeze is real. The internal pressure on Reaves to accept a below-market extension to help the franchise stay agile is mounting. It is a classic Hollywood dilemma. Do you take the massive bag that teams with cap space will happily throw at you in free agency, or do you take a hometown discount to remain the co-star of the most famous basketball team on earth? Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away in the mile-high city, Nikola Jokic faces a completely different kind of pressure. The Denver Nuggets have already tasted championship glory, but their journey since that 2023 title has been a masterclass in the difficulties of maintaining a small-market juggernaut. We have already seen them lose key championship pieces, like Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, due to luxury cap constraints. The Nuggets front office is walking a tightrope, with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Aaron Gordon locking up massive percentages of the cap. Denver is staring down a future where they might be forced to trade away core pieces just to avoid being functionally locked out of making roster moves. Jokic, who has already secured his place among the all-time greats with his MVP trophies and historic statistical dominance, is reportedly looking at this landscape with a grim realization. If he takes the absolute maximum supermax extension he is entitled to, he might be signing up to play the rest of his prime with a stripped-down roster devoid of veteran depth or high-quality role players. The pressure on Jokic isn't coming from media criticism or fan entitlement. It is the structural pressure of the system itself, forcing a fiercely loyal, team-first superstar to consider taking a pay cut just to give his front office a fighting chance to build a competent team around him. This is a definitive, long-form breakdown of the modern NBA's economic battlefield. We're going to dive deep into the numbers, the mindsets, and the legacy-defining choices that Austin Reaves and Nikola Jokic are facing as they contemplate taking a financial hit for the ultimate prize. Stay tuned as we transition into our comprehensive analysis of the CBA rules, the individual team dilemmas, and the broader cultural shift that this breaking news represents for the entire sports world. To fully grasp the magnitude of what Austin Reaves and Nikola Jokic are reportedly considering, we must first pull back the curtain on the invisible hand guiding every single roster decision in the modern NBA, the Collective Bargaining Agreement, or the CBA. When the League and the Players Association ratified the latest CBA, it wasn't just a minor tweak to the rulebook. It was a total economic revolution designed specifically to dismantle super teams and force parity across the league. The introduction of the first and second luxury tax aprons has created a harsh environment for front offices. If a team crosses a second apron, they don't just pay a financial penalty. They lose their mid-level exception. They lose the ability to take back more salary than they send out in trades. They cannot aggregate contracts and deals. And their future first-round draft picks can be frozen and moved to the very end of the round. This is a systemic trap that is creating the intense pressure on Reaves and Jokic. In the past, an owner with deep pockets could simply choose to pay an exorbitant luxury tax bill out of pocket to keep a championship roster together. Today, the penalties are designed to structurally cripple your team's ability to improve. You cannot sign buyout players. You cannot make 2-for-1 trades, and you are effectively stuck with the roster you have. This brings us directly to the doorstep of the Los Angeles Lakers and the specific situation surrounding Austin Reaves. Reaves is the ultimate modern success story. Going undrafted out of Oklahoma, he fought his way through the Summer League, earned a two-way contract, quickly converted it into a standard NBA deal, and eventually signed a 4-year, $56 million contract that was highly celebrated. At the time, it was the maximum the Lakers could offer him due to the Gilbert Arenas provision in the CBA, which limits what teams can offer certain restricted free agents. Since signing that deal, Reaves has transformed into a legitimate borderline all-star caliber guard. He is efficient, incredibly high IQ, draws fouls at an elite rate, and possesses a rare chemistry with LeBron James. On the open market, if Reaves were to hit unrestricted free agency today, he would easily command a contract worth upwards of $25 to $30 million annually. However, the Lakers are trapped in a brutal mathematical reality. LeBron James is earning max money, Anthony Davis is earning max money, and the roster around them is filled with mid-tier salaries that quickly push the team toward that dreaded second apron. The internal pressure on Reaves stems from a simple, unvarnished truth conveyed by management. If you demand your full market value on your next extension, we will have no choice but to let key role players walk, or we will be completely unable to trade for an impactful third star. Reaves is caught between two powerful forces. On one side is a natural desire of any professional athlete to maximize their earnings, especially an undrafted player who didn't enter the league with a guaranteed multi-million-dollar rookie-scale contract. On the other side is the intense, intoxicating allure of being a franchise cornerstone for the Lakers, building a massive off-court brand in Los Angeles, and competing for championships on the biggest stage in sports. If Reaves accepts a pay cut, say, locking in a long-term deal that pays him significantly less than his true market value, he provides the Lakers with the crucial financial breathing room needed to navigate the tax aprons, keep their draft capital movable, and aggressively pursue upgrades at the trade deadline. Now let us pivot to the Rocky Mountains and analyze the situation with Nikola Jokic, which operates on an entirely different scale of economic weight. Jokic is not a role player trying to protect his spot on a contender. He is the undisputed best basketball player on the planet, a transcendent genius whose impact on the game is completely unquantifiable by traditional metrics. Under normal circumstances, a player of Jokic's caliber takes the Supermax contract every single time, without hesitation, and he has earned every single penny of it. But the Denver Nuggets operate in a small market under an ownership group that, while willing to spend a win, must respect the harsh operational limits of a new CBA. Look at what has happened to the Nuggets since their 2023 championship run. The loss of Bruce Brown to Indiana was the first warning sign. The departure of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to Orlando was a definitive confirmation that the new CBA was working exactly as the league intended. It was tearing apart a championship core because the financial penalties of keeping them together were too severe. The Nuggets currently have massive financial commitments. Jamal Murray recently signed a major extension. Michael Porter Jr. is on a max contract that has often been criticized for its value relative to production, and Aaron Gordon remains a vital, highly compensated piece of their defensive and offensive identity. When you stack those contracts on top of a standard supermax for Jokic, the Nuggets are instantly projected to be a second-apron team for the foreseeable future. The consequences for Denver are far more catastrophic than for a destination market like Los Angeles. The Nuggets rely almost entirely on hitting on draft picks and making smart marginal trades to sustain their excellence. If they enter the second apron, their ability to draft young, cheap talent is compromised because their picks get pushed to the end of the round. Their ability to execute trades to fix roster flaws is completely frozen. Jokic looks at this situation not through the lens of personal greed, but through the lens of absolute pragmatism. He loves the game, he loves his teammates, and he wants to win multiple championships. He understands that if he takes every single dollar available to him, he is effectively tying the hands of general manager Calvin Booth. The pressure on Jokic is an existential realization that the only way to save the Denver Nuggets from a slow, painful descent into mediocrity is for him to act as the ultimate shield against the CBA's restrictions, by voluntarily taking a significant pay cut on his next deal. Similar to what we saw Dirk Nowitzki do for the Dallas Mavericks late in his career, or Tim Duncan do repeatedly for the San Antonio Spurs, Jokic can single-handedly drop the Nuggets below the first or second apron. This act of financial selflessness would instantly unlock the mid-level exception for Denver, allowing them to go out into free agency and acquire the exact type of high-level veteran role players they have spent the last 2 years losing. It would allow them to aggregate salaries and trades to acquire another impactful piece. It is a stunning realization. The most dominant player in the league might have to use his own paycheck to fix the structural flaws of a small market franchise. This phenomenon of superstar pay cuts is not entirely unprecedented, but it has never been more necessary than it is right now. We must examine the historical context to understand the psychological framework of these athletes. The gold standard for this will always be the San Antonio Spurs dynasty. Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker took significantly less money throughout the latter half of their careers to ensure that Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford could constantly restock the cupboard with high-quality depth. Because Duncan took millions less, the Spurs were able to sign free agents, retain crucial defenders, and sustain a competitive culture that lasted for 2 decades. We saw a similar dynamic in the NFL with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Brady consistently played on contracts that paid him well below his market value relative to peers like Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning. This allowed Bill Belichick to constantly reinforce the offensive line, maintain an elite defense, and build a roster capable of reaching 9 Super Bowls and winning 6. But there's a crucial difference between the era of Tim Duncan and the era of Nikola Jokic and Austin Reaves. Duncan played under a much more forgiving salary cap system, where the penalties for spending were purely financial. The owner just had to write a bigger check. Today, the system is designed to punish you competitively. It strips away your tools. Therefore, a pay cut in 2026 is infinitely more valuable and impactful than a pay cut was in 2012 or 2015. For Austin Reaves, the decision carries a massive amount of personal risk. Unlike Jokic, who has already made hundreds of millions of dollars in his career, Reaves is still in a phase of his life where he is securing long-term generational wealth. Taking a pay cut for a player in his position requires an immense amount of faith in the organization. It requires a belief that the Lakers will actually use that financial flexibility to build a winner, rather than simply using it to save the ownership group money on their luxury tax bill. This is where the term internal pressure truly manifests. Reaves has to sit across from a front office that is subtly reminding him of unique marketing opportunities, the massive endorsements, and the global fame that comes with being a beloved Laker. They are pitching him on the idea that the money he leaves on the table with his NBA contract will be easily made up through his elevated profile in the entertainment capital of the world. It is a compelling argument, but one that requires a fearless leap of faith from an undrafted kid from Arkansas. For Jokic, the risk is less about personal finance and entirely about organizational execution. If Jokic gives up $30 or $40 million over the course of a 4-year deal, he expects a front office to maximize every single dollar that saves space. If the front office fails to hit on their free agent signings, or if they make poor trades that waste the flexibility Jokic provided them, it could lead to immense frustration. There is nothing worse for a superstar than sacrificing your own hard-earned compensation only to watch your front office mismanage the savings. This is why these reported discussions are so highly confidential and fraught with tension. It requires an absolute alignment of vision between the player, the agent, the general manager, and the ownership group. If this trend catches on, we are looking at a fundamental reordering of how NBA teams are built. We could see a league where the absolute top-tier superstars who are deeply invested in their legacies begin to dictate terms not by demanding trades, but by actively manipulating their contract sizes to bypass the league's parity mechanisms. It would create a fascinating paradox. A collective bargaining agreement designed to create parity could end up creating a new class of super teams built entirely on the voluntary financial sacrifice of elite players who value rings over everything else. The Western Conference is an absolute meat grinder. The rise of young, deeply talented teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who possess an historic mountain of draft picks and a young MVP candidate on a team-friendly timeline, means that teams like the Lakers and Nuggets cannot afford to stand still. They cannot afford to be average. They are being forced into radical measures just to keep pace with the changing times. As we bring this extensive deep dive analysis to a close, it is abundantly clear that the stories of Austin Reaves and Nikola Jokic are not isolated contract disputes. They are the definitive early symptoms of a brave new world in the National Basketball Association. The league's aggressive pursuit of parity through the implementation of the first and second luxury tax aprons has achieved its goal of making it incredibly difficult to maintain high-price rosters. But what the league did not fully anticipate was a fierce, uncompromising competitive drive of its apex creators. When faced with a system designed to systematically dismantle their championship windows, players like Jokic and Reaves are reportedly looking at the ultimate countermove, utilizing financial sacrifice as a legitimate strategic weapon on the basketball court. The choices these two players make over the coming months will serve as a massive case study for the entire sports industry. If Austin Reaves decides to take a hometown discount to remain in Los Angeles, he will solidify his status as an all-time fan favorite, ensuring that the Lakers can navigate the post-LeBron transition with high organizational agility and the assets necessary to remain competitive. He will be gambling on himself, betting that the unique, unparalleled ecosystem of Southern California commerce and global brand recognition will more than compensate for the millions left off the official team ledger. It would be a monumental statement about the enduring power of the purple and gold brand and the value of playing under the brightest lights in all professional sports. On the other hand, if Nikola Jokic follows through and executes a contract that purposely leaves a massive sum of money on the table in Denver, it will stand as one of the most remarkable acts of leadership and franchise loyalty in modern sport history. In a sports culture that routinely criticizes stars for switching teams, forming artificial super teams, and chasing the biggest possible payout, Jokic would be doing the exact opposite. He would be committing his prime years to a small market city, recognizing the structural disadvantages his front office faces, and personally funding the depth of his team out of his own pocket. It would elevate his legacy far beyond the historic triple-doubles and the MVP trophies. It would cement him as the ultimate team-first superstar, a modern-day Tim Duncan who prioritized the collective joy of a championship parade over the individual accumulation of maximum wealth. But let us not overlook the immense pressure this places back on the front offices of the Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. If your players are willing to sacrifice their hard-earned capital for the sake of winning, you no longer have any excuses. The burden of proof shifts entirely onto Rob Pelinka and Calvin Booth. They must execute flawless roster construction. Every mid-level exception must hit. Every draft pick must contribute. And every marginal trade must deliver positive value. The fans will demand nothing less than absolute perfection from the front office if the stars are actively sacrificing to give them the tools to succeed. We are standing on the precipice of a fascinating new era where the salary cap sheet is just as dynamic and critical to watch as the actual action on the hardwood floor. The financial maneuvers discussed today will shape the balance of power in the NBA for the next 5 to 10 years. Will we see other superstars across the league follow suit? Will the next generation of elite players view financial sacrifice as a viable path to immortality? Or will this remain a rare, localized phenomenon restricted to unique personalities like Jokic and specific market dynamics like Los Angeles? Only time will tell, but one thing is absolutely certain. The battle for NBA championships is no longer just being won with high-flying dunks, tactical coaching adjustments, and clutch three-pointers in the closing seconds of the fourth quarter. It is being won, negotiated, and secured in high-stakes boardroom meetings through the silent calculations of salary cap sheets and through profound, legacy-altering decisions of athletes who understand that while money is finite, the glory of being a champion lasts forever. Thank you so much for joining us for this comprehensive, deep-dive breakdown. Make sure to keep your eyes locked right here as we continue to track every breaking update, every financial twist, and every major development in this developing blockbuster story. We will see you next time.